All right. Got my sticky note here. Children's Church, 3rd grade and under. Make Eric skate. The rest of you go to Psalm 83. Psalm 83. If you haven't noticed, Psalms is my favorite book of the Bible, and it's becoming more and more so. And it's okay to be honest. How many of you, when you read your psalm for the day or whenever you read a psalm, you think it's just a prayer of some right-brained emotional musician putting their thoughts down in words, and it's very poetic? Anyone else tend to read it that way? Oh, thank you for being honest. All right, that's the way I kind of always read them. But I'm quickly learning, the more I dig into it, that is not the case. Yes, okay, poetry. And you can look at it in a poetic sense, but you got to start thinking, when you read a psalm, read it and look at these three things. Look, where is it coming historically? What's it talking about prophetically? And messianically. Because every psalm will have one, two, or all three of these things running through. The themes is running through the whole psalm. So if you read it, don't just think, okay, what's this emotional person writing about? Think, okay, there's something historical in it, there's something prophetic in it, and messianic. And like I said, all of them will have one. Almost all of them are messianic in some way, shape, or form. In fact, you can argue that every single one is. But it's also a lot of prophecy. So when you start looking at it that way and start being a nerd about picking apart a psalm, you'll find a lot more. And that's what happened here when I started reading Psalm 83. So you're probably thinking, Dan, when I'm going to read Psalm 83, it's a lot of destruction. And we know you love reading and preaching about God's enemies being destroyed, and I do. But why am I going to cover Psalm 83? It's pretty simple. When Pastor John, someone left us, and I told Pastor, like, hey, if you need someone to fill in, I'll preach. I'm just going to start in Psalm 80 and start working my way down. This is the next psalm. So I started reading it, and I was going to do it at Christmas time, but Sean said do something Christmas. But then I started reading it, and I'm like, holy smokes. If you read Psalm 83, this is from the headlines. You can turn on the news, you can look into what's going on in the Middle East, and this is exactly what's going on right now. So that's what I want us to look into Psalm 83. It's very pertinent to what's going on today. So if you should be there by now. So I'm going to read through it. Now think about this, okay? Think about historically. We're not going to turn to it, but if you go to 2 Chronicles 20, there's King Jehoshaphat is facing down nations that are very similar to this coalition. So this psalm may have been written during that time, thinking about that historical context. Think about what's going on in Israel right now. All right, like I said, every psalm, it can be history and prophetic at the same time, which is pretty amazing, but it's inspired by God, so it can do that. So think about what's going on in the Holy Land right now, and then think about what's going to be happening in the Holy Land in the future. On your own time, you can read Daniel 7, Daniel 2, Zechariah 12 and 14, Joel 3, Ezekiel 38, 39, Revelation 16 are all pointing to this psalm as well, or psalms point to that way. And think how it points to Christ. Scott just read Psalm 2 for us, very linked. This is pointing to Christ, the King of Kings. So Psalm 83, let's read through it quick before we get nerdy. All right, Psalm 83, Song of Asaph. O God, do not keep silence, do not hold your peace, or be still, O God, for behold, your enemies make an uproar. Those who hate you have raised their heads. They lay crafty plans against your people. They consult together against your treasured ones. They say, come, let us wipe them out as a nation. Let the name of Israel be remembered no more. For they conspire with one accord. Against you they make a covenant. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher also has joined them. They are the strong arm of the children of Lot. Do to them as you did to Midian, as to Sisera and Jabin at the river Kishon, who were destroyed at Endor. who became dung for the ground. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, and the princes like Zeba and Zalmunna, who said, let us take possession for ourselves of the pastures of God. O my God, make them like a whirling dust, like chaff before the wind. As fire consumes the forest, as a flame set the mountains ablaze, so you may pursue them with your tempest and terrify them with your hurricane. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be put to shame and dismayed forever. Let them perish in disgrace, that they may know that you alone, whose name is the Lord, are the Most High over all the earth. Pretty awesome psalm. You read that and you're thinking, okay, very poetic. Asaph is facing a crisis, so he's being very poetic in describing this crisis. He's using some creation. He's just going over some cool Old Testament stories. But if you start thinking specifically, this is not just a poem. This is the Word of God explaining the situation. So point number one here, the first couple of verses, is the prayer. You have Asaph's prayer, and it starts with, O God, do not keep silence. Do not hold your peace or be still, O God. He's coming right with three requests right away. Asaph's praying, Lord, I have these three things to ask. First one is Asaph wants a response. He says, do not keep silence. So I'm picturing Asaph, either he's looking around or he's thinking, he's got all the nations surround him, and he's like, what happened? How do we get to this point that we're all of a sudden surrounded by these nations, we're under attack? Was God sleeping? How do we go from peace to this all of a sudden? So he's probably thinking, God, you're not aware of the situation. Please wake up. Do not be silent. Look what's going on. He also wants retribution. He says, do not hold your peace. He doesn't just want God to wake up. He wants God to be angry with the enemies. He wants God, wake up. Don't just scold them. Right? Don't hold your peace. Please be aware of the situation and make war against these people. It's like waking a sleeping giant. When Japanese attack us in December 7th, they woke a sleeping giant. They didn't just awake, but there's that resolve that's coming. God, please wake up and come and hold your peace. And then it says, do not be still. He wants reaction. He wants a response, he wants retribution, and he wants a reaction. He doesn't want, just like I said, a verbal God coming out and proclaiming judgment. He wants, hey, action. Don't be still. Take action. Help us out. And you're probably thinking it's not very polite, all right? It's not polite to call down judgment. Hey, I want judgment. Come here and beat these guys down, right? Smackdown, all right? They're surrounded. Bring the smackdown, O Lord. Not polite. Understand you have these nations surrounding Israel, and as we read in the text, they want to destroy Israel. So, we might be a very polite society, but we're not the size of New Jersey surrounded by a bunch of nations that want to kill us. So the first part of his prayer is he's got three requests, but then verse 2, he makes it personal, which I found pretty interesting. It says, behold, your enemies make an uproar. Those who hate you have raised their heads. Who's the victim? Who is Asaph saying the victim is? God. Thank you. He's not saying, hey, they're surrounding us. They're our enemy. He's saying, hey, they hate you. They're your enemies. Not our enemies. They're your enemies. They hate you. So he views these surrounding nations that want to destroy Israel not just as, hey, this is our problem. God, they hate you. They're coming at you just as much as they're coming at us. And that made me think of David and Goliath. If you remember, David shows up to the encampment when Goliath is spewing his nonsense. All right, he's being very vocal, just like these guys are being loud. Goliath's there, just poking fun. Everyone else in the encampment, Israel encampment, is looking and saying, hey, you know what? I can handle this. Just sticks and stones can break my bones, right? But your words, they don't do anything. But David shows up and says, hey, guys, he's not poking fun at us. He's poking fun at our God. He needs to die. I need to go there and throw a rock in his head and then cut off his head for what he's saying about our God. It's not an insult to us, it's insult to God. So you have the true victim here. Asaph is like, hey, they're our enemies, but they're against you, Lord. They're the ones that are shaking their fist at you. He also describes their arrogance. He says they make an uproar. They are loud. The loud is boastful. They get together like, yeah, we're going to kill Israel, we're going to destroy, and they're just being very boastful. And And I think about all the haters of God now. You go on TV or go to a university and you watch one of these stupid morning shows and they all hate God and they're very loud and obnoxious about it. Just think of a bunch of Rosie O'Donnells surrounding, that's a little old school, but just think about that, surrounding Israel. It's very loud, and boisterous, and arrogant, just speaking all these things. And then they're brazen. He describes their brazenness. He says they have raised their heads. They're about to go to war against Israel, and they raise their heads. You raise your head when you're ready to attack. All right? You look up, you identify where you're going, and you move to that spot. But it also shows that they are not afraid to be identified. Yeah, okay, we're enemies of God. God, we're attacking you, we're attacking your people. They're not afraid to be identified. They're raising their head. They're willing to be noticed. They're confident enough to expose themselves before they go into battle. They're lifting their heads in pride. So, like I said, they're raising their heads. They're brazen. Yeah, we're here. You can see us. We're coming at you. They're arrogant, and God is the true victim here. And Asaph recognizes that. And that's part one of his prayer. We'll come back to finishing his prayer. The second thing you see here in this psalm is the enemy's intent. Verses 3 and 4, it talks about how they attack. They lay crafty plans against the people. They consult together against your treasure ones. They have crafty, they're sneaky, all right? They don't fight fair. Think about today, the enemies of God, whether it's in academia, think about over where Israel's at now. Think about actually what is happening, because this psalm is exactly describing what's going on since October 7th. They don't fight fair. And they don't care if what they say is true or not. You say something and it's lies and deceit. You say it long enough, you eventually get people to believe it, and the damage is done. Maybe at the end of the conflict that's going on now, Israel's shown to be justified for going into Gaza. It doesn't matter. They've done their damage. We have colleges around our country just being stupid about what they're doing and staying up. It doesn't matter. The lie is effective. They're going to be sneaky and crafty about it. They don't have to follow rules. And they don't follow rules. They also conspire. It says they gather together. Why would they conspire? Because none of them are strong enough to do it on their own. They have to get help. They're taking on God's people. They have to get others to come and be a part of it. And for two reasons. They're not strong enough, so they want everyone, hey, come join us so we can attack together. But there's also, let's get everyone, if you're not going to attack us, don't get in our way. Just don't act. Stay away. Don't interfere. Because that not interfering with our plan to destroy Israel is the same as being on our side. So either get on board or don't interfere. And we're going to sneakily put lies out in there so everyone can say, you know what, we'll back off. You deal with Israel the way you think you need necessary. So they're sneaky about it, and they conspire. Verse 4 talks about why they attack. And it's pretty clear. I mean, it's even in quotes. They say, come, let us wipe them out as a nation. Let the name of Israel be remembered no more. All right. This has been the theme from the very beginning. This has been Satan's goal from the very beginning. You can go back to Exodus 1, and Pharaoh is saying, these people are growing too strong. Let's destroy them. Let's kill them. You can read the book of Esther. You can watch World War II documentaries. All through history, Satan has been moving to destroy God's people. Satan knows he can't destroy God. Let's destroy his people for a lot of different various reasons. How does this apply today? I found an interview that was taken at the end of last year. All right, if you don't know what I'm talking about, the current issue in Israel, if your head's in the sand and you don't watch any news, all right, on October 7th, Hamas from Gaza started launching rockets and taking hostages in Israel and started war. Okay, so one of the senior officials, Ghazi Hamad, was interviewed on a Lebanese channel about the situation. All right, this is not a good dude. So they were asking him in this interview, and he hailed the systematic slaughter of civilians of Israel on October 7th, and he vowed that the Palestinian terror group would repeat similar assaults many times in the future until Israel was exterminated. And then, quote, he said, Israel is a country that has no place in our land. We must remove it because it constitutes a security, military, and political catastrophe to the Arab and Islamic nation. We are not ashamed to say this. He says the existence of Israel is illogical and must be wiped off all Palestinian lands, including West Bank, Gaza, and Israel. Then the interviewer asked this Hamad, does this mean the complete annihilation of Israel? And Hamas said, yes, of course. We must teach Israel a lesson, and we will do it twice and 3 times. The events of October 7 is just the first time. There will be a second, a third, and a fourth, Hamad continued. Will we have to pay a price? Yes, and we are ready to pay it. We are called a nation of martyrs, and we are proud to sacrifice martyrs. So this psalm is very relevant to today. This is not just looking back at Jehoshaphat's day of their turmoil. It is happening right now. But the point is, from the very beginning, Satan, God's enemies, have been looking to destroy and wipe Israel out. It continues in 2024. They also want to destroy Israel's name. It says, the name of Israel be remembered no more, which is sad. Israel is not perfect. Anyone that can read through the Old Testament and look at Israel right now, they're not a perfect nation. All right? They've done their, we can read the Old Testament and be like, you guys are stupid. We continue making these same mistakes and no wonder why you have these problems. They're not perfect. And it's easy to, in our, if you're a really good dispensationalist, separate Israel age, church age. The story of Israel is the story of God's love. All right? From the way it began and the way it's going to end, it's a story of God's love. So, of course, Satan wants to destroy the name, get rid of the name forever. And he's doing that today. You can look at the news of what colleges, universities, people burning themselves in the name of anti-Semitism. The wave is coming, all right? And if you read Revelation and the end times, it's going to have to come. Doesn't mean we have to be happy with it. It doesn't mean we partake in it. It's coming because that's a part of God's overall what's going to happen in Revelation. But that wave is spreading, and it's important for us to identify this. And my goal is not to make this a current events sermon. It's not to be a political message. But what I want us to see when we start digging more into the psalm is not to compartmentalize current events, geography, politics, world religion, what goes here on a church, all is linked. It all matters, and it's all the same story. We go to school and we learn different subjects. So you have your 8 a.m. class, you have this. All right, I learn geography here, then I go to science here, and I go to math there. They're all linked, but we like to be like there's different subjects. They're all together. So I don't know how we can understand current events without understanding God's words. I don't know how analysts and experts can go on TV and explain these things without understanding Psalm 83. They just make fools of themselves. So that being said, we got to look at geography, because I'm more of a geography nerd than I'm a history nerd. And if you know me, I love history. Geography I love even more. So let's look at the enemy's composition, which we find in verses 5 through 8. Again, this is easy. When you read a psalm, it's easy just to brush through it. Okay, he's just naming places here and there. But I want to show that Israel's surrounded. These are real places, real people groups that hate Israel. So understanding history in the Bible, history and geography will help understand the Bible 1,000%. So it's not poetry, it's just not naming place. So I got my map. Can I get my map? So it took me a lot of research to find these places. Some were easier than others. And then I put them on a map to kind of show you what Israel's facing in this chapter, in the past, in the current, and in the future. And it took me even longer to figure out how to do a PowerPoint. So I want you to appreciate this, okay? So you have, of all these that were listed, the first one that was listed is Edom. All right, it's on the south. Edom is from the descendants of Esau. And Pastor Phil and Eileen actually get to go there. They're going to Petra. You probably recognize, if you know Petra, that's part of Edom. Hopefully Pastor and Eileen choose wisely. If you're looking for my Indiana Jones reference, that was it. All right, the second one are the Ishmaelites. All right, they're down there towards Arabia. You have Moab. All right, they're east of the Dead Sea. That's where Ruth came from. That is one of the descendants of Lot. After the whole pillar of salt, Sodom and Gomorrah affair. We're not going to go over it now because there's kids present, but there's some things that happened, and there was two sons that came out of it. One was Moab. The Hagrites, all right, they're over there kind of east of Moab. And this took a lot of research. They could be there. It's either there's two places, that or references Egypt, because Hagar, they think is from Hagar and Egypt. So it could represent Egypt. Most of what I was researching is that's the location. Gebal, there's two possible things. It's a descendant of Esau. Most places think that it's a city up in Lebanon, current-day Lebanon, north of Beirut. Ammon, this is another one of those sons of Lot. All right, they're east of the Jordan River. Amalek, they're going towards Egypt in the Sinai Peninsula. Philistia, it's out there in the southwest. Anyone recognize that location? That's Gaza. You have Tyre is mentioned. That's up in Lebanon. That's old Phoenicia. That empire, that's just right near Beirut, just a little south. And then Asher, which is Assyria. And it even says that they are the strong arm of the children of Lot, almost as if they're supporting, maybe not directly involved, but indirectly supporting this coalition. So when you look at that map, like I said, I hope you appreciate it because it took a while to do that. They're surrounded, every direction. I mean, even on the seaside, they're surrounded by enemies that want to destroy them. And the sad thing is, if you know the history of these names, at least half of them are related to the children of Israel. Ishmaelites, Lot, Ammon, and that's the sad thing. But all these people, all these nations want to destroy Israel. And it's the same as in 2 Chronicles, as it is in 2023 and 24. You have the same situation that you find here in Psalm 83. If you get bored, this is just a little curious thing to think about. I don't want to, it's easy to get sucked into the whole eschatology, end times thing, what's going on. But there's 10 nations here, and there's 10 nations mentioned in Daniel 7. You can read Daniel 7 about the 10 nations coming together against Israel. Just kind of makes you wonder. I'm not saying that's that. Some people think it's the European Union. But I think it's pretty interesting. There's 10 nations surrounding the enemy, surrounding Israel. So now we move to the next points, I wouldn't say happier points, but Asaph has taken the offensive and he starts praying. He starts praying specifically. And this is where it's good to nerd out. Because if you nerd out and you dig into history and geography and science, you actually realize this is not just a poetic description. This is the Word of God. These things are mentioned for a reason. So, and this is where Dan had to fix himself, not just read it like an emotional prayer. These things are mentioned on purpose. So, first thing he does, he prays specifically remembering history. In verses 9 through 12, he mentions two times in Israel's history that God delivered them. The first one is talking about Gideon versus the Midianites. And the princes of the Midianites were Oreb, Zeb, Zeba, and Zalmunna. That's Judges 6 and 8. And then he also mentions about Sisera, Jabin and Sisera. That's when Deborah and Barak were commanded to go and fight against Jabin and Sisera. And that was for the Canaanites. And that's in Judges 4 and 5. Of course, the best part of that story is when Jael takes the tent peg and smashes it through Sisera's head. All right? If you're sick like that. But again, don't think poetically, think specifically. Why would the author mention these? Is he just looking back in time, thinking, oh, these are two good stories? I thought of 4 reasons why he'd mention these stories specifically. The first is both of these had direct involvement from God. God called people to come and to go fight, and then the battles themselves had miracles. God miraculously got involved in the battle, in the victory. And so Asaph here is looking for the same miracle-type victory. The second reason he would pick both these instances is because both had deliverance from unlikely sources. Jabin and Sisera were defeated by using females in a very male-dominated culture. Like I said, Jael pounded a tent peg through a general's head. Gideon was a scaredy cat hiding, and God kept calling him, go and fight, go and fight. Take your army of 32,000 and go down to 300. Unlikely sources. Both enemies reflect a portion of the current attackers. Midian would be Arabia and Edom in the southern area, and then Jabin and Sisera from Canaan, and they were coming from the north. So it shows a good percentage of the people that were mentioned as enemies here are covered in those two stories. And then both enemies share the same motive as the current attackers. Let us take possession for themselves, the pastures of God. They want Israel. They want Israel gone, and they want the land. Which sounds a lot like that Hamas interview I just read. So Asaph prayed specifically because he looked into history. It wasn't just being poetic. Now, verses 13 through 15, he prays specifically referencing creation. And all the commentary I was reading here says, because this is what they want to see happen with the enemies. First is verse 13, confused, like a whirling wind, going around and around uncontrollably. Sometimes it's translated tumbleweed. All right, just think of all the confusion. He wants the enemies to be confused. He wants them to be devastated. If you look in 14, it talks about a forest fire here. As a fire consumes the forest, a flame set the mountains ablaze. We can drive to east of Peninsula here and see what a forest fire does. That's what Asaph wants of these nations. Destroy them like a forest fire does. Make them only good for mushroom hunting. And then he wants them terrified. The storms that are terrifying. Storms are terrifying. I'm from the Midwest. For those of you that grew up in the Kenai, you don't know what a storm is. So go to the Midwest and go in the middle of a Midwest thunderstorm and understand how terrifying that is. That's what he wants. He wants them to be terrified. So that's what I was reading, and that's my initial outline. So as I'm building this PowerPoint, I started thinking, wait a second. If the author was being specific in everything else he's talking about, maybe he wasn't just being poetic with the creation as well. So I started thinking, why would he mention these things? And I started thinking about all the surrounding areas of Israel. Mountains, desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and forest. So look at the desert wind. All right, he's using creation to describe the personal defeat of the enemy. The desert wind. Most of these nations are Bedouin or nomadic. They are lovers of the desert. They don't love it. That's where they live, and that's where they thrive. So use the desert wind, a whirlwind, a sandstorm, an image that they would be very familiar with living in the desert, and defeat them that way. So to the Bedouin, that would be a cut on pride. I can't handle the sandstorms. We'd be panicking. But these guys are of the desert. They know that. They live in it. They thrive in that. And he says, be like a whirlwind and just like dust chaff before the wind. Get rid of them. A cut to the Bedouin lifestyle pride. Forest fire. I thought this one was interesting when I started thinking about specifically. This is the Word of God. It's inspired. Why would he mention the forest fire of all things? When you get bored, Google the flag of Lebanon. What's on the flag of Lebanon but a big cedar tree right in the center? Lebanon, which is a good chunk of these, and where Hezbollah is at right now, prides itself and known for exporting their timbers. Beautiful trees. That is their pride and joy. Come with them like a forest fire. Wipe them out. What a cut to the pride of Lebanon and Hezbollah and the enemies to the north than a forest fire to wipe out everything that they put on their flag. And then the third thing was a hurricane. Again, Gaza and Lebanon, current Lebanon, are on the Mediterranean Sea. Lebanon, again, Phoenicia. They had a vast Mediterranean maritime empire of trade that they prided themselves on. You could find their stuff all over the Mediterranean world. They were sailors. They were good at it. Cut to their pride. Come with them like a storm, like a hurricane, and destroy them. They think they're so good at seafaring. Destroy them that way. They're proud of their export of their trees. Solomon even went to them for the trees, right? Destroy it that way. So when I started reading about that creation like that, it's not poetic. This is very specific. They have a specific enemy, and he's not just listing creation to be descriptive. I think is very pinpoint These are the people that want to attack us. Hit them where it hurts their pride the most. The next thing he prays for specifically is the reversing of attitudes in verses 16 and 17. It says, fill their faces with shame that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be put to shame and dismayed forever. Let them perish in disgrace. Not very nice. So the first thing that he prays for in their attitudes changing is the change from pride to shame. And in verse 2 we were looking at, their heads are up, they're loud and arrogant, and their heads are up, they're not afraid to be noticed. So he wants to see that pride, and he wants shame on their faces. Take that and completely turn upside down. He's talking about in creation, taking everything they're prideful at and wiping it clean. Next thing was from zenith to ruin. These nations were at the top of their game. They're gathering together. They seem strong. There's no way Israel could stop them because they're gathered together, but they're all at the epitome. They're being backed by Assyria and people beyond. But he wants to see them in the ruin, destroy them. It says, perish in disgrace. He wants them destroyed and ruined, both physically and their reputation. But this is where Asaph is mature than I would have been if I were writing this. He asks for the enemy to go from enemy to repentant. It says, fill their faces with shame that they may seek your name, O Lord. Dan would be like, destroy this enemy, all right? Destroy them, put them to shame so they can see who you are, that they will seek your name, O Lord. So, from pride to shame, from zenith to ruin, to enemy to repentant, that is how he wants the attitudes reversed of the enemy. Which goes to the prayer part 2, verse 18. That they may know that you alone, whose name is the Lord, are most high over all the earth. So when I was reading this, I was struck by this. He says that they may know the name is the Lord in all caps, Jehovah. And then it says most high, capitalized, El Elyon. If you go back to verse 1, it says, O God, and then O God. He's using a generic name in verse 1, El, or Elohim. Capital E, but it's the generic. They know there's God. It's a very generic form of God. O God, come help us. Through all of his prayer and focusing and looking at things and realizing geography, history, and creation, he goes and he's using personal names. It's completely changed his perspective, thinking about the situation. It goes from a generic name of God, because every nation here has got God, little e, Elohim, God. Now it's going to a very personal, Jehovah. And that's, even in verse 16 he mentions it. He wants the enemies to know God personally. There's a big difference between knowing there is a God and knowing God. A difference between knowing that there's an Elohim and knowing the Lord Jehovah, the personal one. He wants that personal connection, knowledge. The difference is the difference between destruction and salvation. Knowing that there is a God and knowing the God, Jehovah, by name. The difference is destruction versus salvation. And then Most High, El Elyon, one of the names that God, is used of God many a times. This term describes God's rule and reign over the nations. We just read about that in Psalm 2. And in several places in Psalms you'll see it. Psalms 47:2. For the Lord Most High is awesome. He is a great king over all the earth. And in Psalm 97, you see, for you, Lord, are most high above all the earth. You are exalted far above all other gods. And then Psalm 91, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. So it's good, it's critical to know Jehovah, know him personally, not just the generic God. Yeah, I believe in God. I might even believe in the God, but knowing him personally, Jehovah, but knowing that he is Most High. He is above all this. You can look around, be surrounded by all these nations that want to destroy you, but knowing that he is above all that. He is the Most High. He's in charge of that. He's the King of Kings. He's the God of gods. Israel's enemies, as Asaph is putting here, must come to know that the Lord is Most High. Israel's enemies need to know that he is most high, and that his personal, but that he is most high. Israel must know, Asaph looks there, he's telling his people around here, we need to know that our God is the most high. He's above all this. Asaph needed to come to know that God is most high, and his perspective changed knowing this. From the beginning to God, we need your help, to Jehovah, we need your help. You are most high. You're going to destroy them. And then Asaph was able to take that comfort under the shadow of the Almighty. So in conclusion, there's a lot of conclusions. Yes, I want you to read the Psalms because I love the Psalms, and the more I read them, the more I dig into them, the more I love them. Yes, I want you to read them considering historical, prophetic, and messianic significance. Yeah, I want you to read it being a nerd, not just checking out what you learned at school and then coming to church and they're not linked. Learning geography and history and creation, how they all mix together. Yes, I want you to understand current situations over in Israel right now, and that if you're not on the right side, if you're going to follow that wave of anti-Semitism, you should probably fix yourself. But that's not the point. All right. My conclusion is the same as Asaph's and his part 2 of the prayer. And that is going back to the names of God that he concluded with. After all that, after all the trouble, he comes down to the 2 names of God here, Jehovah and the Most High, El Elyon. So the first thing is, do you know the Lord? And I'm not talking, do you know God? I believe in God. Yes, God's a part of me. No, do you know Jehovah? Personal name, do you know him? Because like I said, the difference between knowing there is a God and knowing him personally is the difference between destruction and salvation. And then the second thing, do you know that the Lord is most high? Do you know that he's in control? That we can look at the news and be like, holy smokes, more rockets being launched. Because there's going to be more and more. This Hamas leader said he wants more. We look at all those references I talked about in Joel and Zechariah and Revelation and Ezekiel. It's going to happen. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And we can panic, or we can know that the Lord is most high. Are you standing on the promises? That's why I asked for that song to be sung. Because we have the word here. God's going to triumph. He is the Most High. He is the King of Kings. He's above all this. You can look at that map that I spent hours trying to figure out how to build. And you can see it's surrounded. It doesn't look good for Israel, the size of New Jersey, surrounded by all these nations, and be supported by bigger nations outside. Do you know that the Lord is Most High? Do you know him personally? Do you know that he's in control? It makes all the difference. Let's pray.